Hey folks, this is Andrea from the training department. So in this video, we're going to talk about the switcher and the person who operates the switcher. That's the technical director. So what the switcher is it takes every single video input or source, and then you switch between each one during your program. So that means it's taking every camera in the studio, every graphic that gets made, every video or photo that you want to play. All of those elements come into the switcher, and it's the technical director's job to then switch between each one of those inputs as they are instructed by the director. The other job of the technical director is also any clips that are pre-made. So that means any photo or any pre-recorded video that you want to play. It's the technical director's job to load each one of those clips into the Tricaster, so then once the show's going, they have them set up and ready to go. And finally, the technical director's job is to then take the finished program and transfer it onto a hard drive so you can take it and either submit it right away or do some editing if you need to later on. So let's get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Eric, the other trainer here, and I want to talk to you about how you will record your show, what you record it onto. Usually we suggest that you use a large capacity device like an external hard drive, especially one that has its own power source. Its own power source meaning, an AC power supply that you would plug into the wall. And these are getting harder to find these days, so you might have to shop around, but these work great. They have a disc that spins, and we recommend a disc that spins 7,200 revolutions per minute, so 7,200 RPMs, because that is good for capturing video. It can keep up with whatever data you throw at it. Some people prefer the portability of flash drives. So if you prefer, you can use a high capacity and also a high speed USB flash drive. So anyway, when you take your flash drive or your high capacity external hard drive into the room here, you're going to want to plug it in straight off so you don't forget this. You definitely need to do that before you start a recording session. You can't plug it in during a session or unplug it during a session. That will wreak havoc with our system. It'll freeze, typically it will freeze the system. So you must plug it in before the session. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You plug it into where it says SWR switcher. And it is a USB 3 socket. So that's what we recommend. So you want to start a session nice and clean. You don't want to start in someone else's session. When you sit here at the technical director station here, you're going to make sure you're starting with the proper start screen. So if you happen to see a screen like this, you're in the wrong place. So you always want to start from step one, and so back out. You back out by hitting this it's a very dark gray arrow. You click that. It takes you back to this screen. This is your opening screen. You must start here and make a new session. So you're going to click on the new button. And then where it says session name, type in whatever you want to call it. So for example, right now I'm teaching the Tricaster, so I'm going to call this. And then under template, you have to select main studio template. Always main studio template. Select that, and then below that there's a volume. Volume means where you're saving the session. Where's your recording going? It's always going to be, at first, it's going to be to the CanTV hard drive, which is the capture, the Z drive, Z capture. So you do have the option of capturing directly to your own SD card. That's another lesson for another time. But this is the normal way it should be. So then hit Start Session. It's going to usually be on live, but if it doesn't say live, it might be on one of these other features. So just click on live if it's not selected and hit Start Live Production. Then give it a minute. It takes a moment for this to warm up. It's going to recognize all the cameras, get everything ready for you. There we go. It's populating the screen. One thing is to make sure you don't have a corrupted session, and that can happen if the settings are not right. And so to do that, you're going to go up to a little gear next to the word record here. Off to the right, there's a little gear. Click the gear. This menu pops open. You can drag if you feel like it. And then you're going to ignore most of this. There's a lot going on here. Most of this is not relevant. What is relevant is under distribution. Underneath that, these features pay special attention to. So the source, this is very important. It should say PGM, which means program. That means that you're going to be recording your program. If it doesn't say PGM, it could be saying something else. See, if I click, you see other things. It might be saying something different, and you're not going to actually record your program. So a lot of work will be for nothing. So if it does say something different there, then exit out, close, hit the close button. Exit out by going up to File and Exit. And it says, are you sure that you want to exit? Yes, you hit Exit. So you're coming out, and then you're going to go back in again. And when you come back in, come all the way out. So when you come back in, it should be okay. Now the session that you created should be listed on the list here. There it is right there, Tricaster lesson. So you can go right back into your same session. You don't have to create a whole new session. And then again, you hit Start Live Production. And once again, we're going to go and check to make sure that we have PGM set as our source that we want to record. So very quickly, I'll just do that again. So next to record gear, there's the list under distribution, source, PGM. That's correct. And also make sure the little check is checked next to it. The check is telling the system, yes, I do want to record that source. And then if you want to take an extra look on the right under destination, it tells you the whole chain of where the recording will be going. It should at the very least say Z. And later we'll talk about where that is when we get our session extracted out of here and onto our hard drive.
So once you have your session set up and ready to go, then you can actually start using the switcher. So basically how the switcher works, for the most part, what you're going to be worrying about is your preview and your program, all right? So if you look both here on the board, also on the large monitors up top, and also on your interface, you'll see you have a preview and a program window. So the program window is exactly that. It's your program. It's what you're recording. It's your show. The preview is the shot that you're getting ready to cut to, all right? So if you look over here on the board, here's my bottom row, that's the preview. The top row is my program, and that, again, is the one that's getting recorded. So whenever I want to change the shot I'm recording, I get it ready in preview. So I have, let's do camera 4. I'll have it ready. And then once it's ready, I can take it, all right? So when I hit this take button, it switches from camera 3 to camera 4, all right? So you can take, and you can also dissolve, all right? So that's if you want to do a transition. So instead of it being a hard cut, you can do a fade from one shot to the next. We can talk about transitions in a second. Whenever you are getting a camera ready and you take it, you're always using the preview bus, never hitting the program, all right? It's not really a good idea to just go over to the program and do what's called hot taking, all right? So the reason you don't really want to do that is because you might, frankly, make a mistake. So this preview bus is kind of your buffer, you know? It kind of keeps you, from switching to something you don't want. It's also likely that maybe the director says ready camera 2 and then changes their mind and says ready camera 3. So you don't want to just take camera 2 if the director didn't ask you to yet. So it really just acts as a protective barrier to keep you from potentially cutting to something that you don't want to cut to. Now next I want to talk about what all of these sources actually are. All right. So cameras 1 through 4, those are the cameras that are on the floor, on the pedestals. Then if you go over to 5 and 6, these are actually 2 cameras that are up in the rafters, and they can actually be adjusted from here on the switcher, which we'll talk about later. Moving on, we have net 1 and net 2. So net 1, this one is set to anything that's in the CG, which we'll talk about in another video. But that's all your graphics. That lives in net 1. Net 2 is kind of an empty bucket that can get filled with different things. DDR1 and DDR2, these are where any pre-recorded videos or photos can live, all right? DDR stands for digital disc recorder, but these are the two buckets, I like to call them, where you can place any videos, any photos you have pre-recorded, and you can bring those up in those 2 sources. So then over here, next to DDR 1 and 2, we have GFX 1 and 2. This means graphics effects, and this is just for photos, all right? Unlike DDR, that can be either or. I'm going to move on over to here. It's black, which is just a black screen. Sometimes you might need to use that to maybe fade between different shots if you want. And then all these MEs, we here in the studio, we use them primarily for green screen. That's part of a workshop that you can take later on once you're certified. But that's kind of a basic overview of each one of the sources. So again, whenever I want to get a source ready, I just hit it here in the preview window, and then I can take it, all right? Now, like I said earlier, if you want to do some sort of transition, then I kind of have a couple options here. If I get some shot ready and I get asked to dissolve, I can do it in 2 ways. I can just hit this auto button, which has like an auto setting where it dissolves from one shot to the next. I can set it to be between like 1, 3, 5 seconds. So then whenever I hit that auto button, it'll be a 3-second fade, a 1-second fade, whatever I want to set it to. The other way I can do it is manually with the T-bar. So let's say I get camera 4 ready, and then I use the T-bar over here to slowly fade from one shot to the next. So this is nice because it gives you more control. It kind of looks more natural, but it's also very important that you fully complete the transition, all right? Because if you just kind of stay like halfway through or you don't complete it, then the switcher doesn't actually know which shot you're trying to be on, and then the board gets all locked up. So again, as nice as this T-bar is, it's very important to make sure that you stay on one end or the other, completing the transition. If you wanted to, say, maybe change the speed of your auto transition, you can actually use this little knob here where it says rate. And if I turn it to the right, it makes the transition longer, which I can tell here on the screen. And then if I turn it to the left, it makes my transition shorter. So these transitions are talking about frames per second. And here at CanTV, this studio records in 60 frames per second. That's also how we broadcast, is out on 60 frames per second. So if it says it's 1 second and 30 frames, that means it's 1.5 seconds. All right? So that's just the very basics of switching from one camera to the next. All right? Only using the preview buttons and then taking or dissolving as instructed by the director. And that's it.
So let's talk about bringing graphics into the system for use on your program. There's an area on the screen called DSK. That stands for downstream key. Downstream key, that means that you're getting it from somewhere else that you can think of as the source upstream flowing downstream to us here at the Tricaster. So if it's being made available to us, we can bring it onto the show. And that's something you coordinate with your CG person. So on the screen, it comes through. Usually it's set to come through here. And you can tell that it is coming through because it says Gen CG, and that's the name of our software over there on the CG station. You can also see that there's a graphic coming through. The graphic is being sent from over there to us, and so if we need to bring it in, there are buttons here on the Tricaster that you can push to bring it in. DSK1 take, that will bring in whatever graphic they're sending us. It'll put it on the screen. And if you hit it again, it goes away. That's an instant cut. If you prefer to bring it in smoothly and slowly, you can use the DSK auto. Push that, and it dissolves it in. The default is 1 second. It takes a second. And you can push the auto button again, DSK1 auto, to remove it. Now, of course, that time can be changed. Up here on the screen, as I've said, it's set usually to Gen CG, to the right of this virtual T-bar. That sometimes can change. You can just go there with your mouse to the little arrow, click it, look at your different inputs, and if Gen CG is not selected, you could select it. This is the way that you assign something to this button that's on this board. The DSK1 take will take whatever you have assigned to DSK1. It doesn't say DSK1 up here on the screen. All it says is whatever is assigned to it. But you know that it's DSK1 because it's just to the right of the T-bar. So here on the hard physical board, just to the right of this T-bar, you see DSK1. And you also see DSK2. So here on the virtual screen, the first one is representing DSK1. The one next to it represents DSK2. So if I were to push DSK2 take on this hard board here, it would bring in whatever is loaded into that area. And as you can see, it's graphics 1. So if I had something loaded into graphics 1, over here on the left side of the screen, if I had something in here and I pushed DSK2 take, it would bring the contents of that graphics 1 buffer onto our screen. It's like another layer. It'll paste it on top of whatever's already there. So your keying in means that you're inserting it into the background, whatever that background is, the video, for example, of our set. Before they give the command to take the graphic, they need to check with the CG person, make sure they're giving us the correct graphic before we actually commit to putting it on the screen. And if it's the wrong graphic, there will be time for them to change it and give us the proper graphic before the tech director actually hits the button and takes it in.
Okay, so like I said earlier, there are actually 2 cameras that are kind of up in the rafters in the studio, and that's camera 5 and camera 6. And camera 5 and 6 are both called PTZ cameras, all right? So what that means that we can change the position and the zoom and the angle of each of these cameras. And we can't do that obviously up in the rafters. We can do it here on the switcher. Okay, so if I want to change what camera 5 or 6 is looking at, I press the shift button, and then I look over here in this ME delegate area, and I choose either 5 or 6. So I want to adjust 5. And then still holding the shift, I'm going to come over here to the joystick, and I can actually shift to the right. I can shift to the left. I can zoom out. I can zoom in. So I can use this to get kind of whatever sort of alternative shot that I want to get. For the most part, these cameras are good for getting maybe like an extreme wide shot, or if you have like an audience, it might be good to kind of get a shot of the whole scene with the audience. So whatever you like. I'm gonna maybe stick with a wide, and I can tilt up and tilt down and just keep adjusting until I get a shot I'm happy with. Now these cameras are autofocus. These cameras also have an auto iris, so that means you can't adjust the brightness or the contrast of the image like you can with the cameras on the floor. So just keep that in mind. If I want to change camera 6, then I just hold down the shift key again, make sure I've got camera 6 selected, and then I can use that joystick, again twisting it to zoom in and out, and then tilting it left and right, and then actually down is up and up is down with these. So if you tilt up, you're actually going to go down. And if you tilt down, you're going to go up. All right. That's it.
Now we're going to talk about DDRs and GFXs. Those are areas that you can bring supplementary B-roll type of material into. Like, it's really good to illustrate your show, illustrate what your guests are talking about. On the screen here we have DDR1 on the left. We've got DDR2 on the right. Graphics 1 on the left, graphics 2 on the right. So think of these as parking lots. This is a big, nice, empty parking lot waiting for cars to come in and park there. And so you're going to add stuff in by hitting this little plus at the bottom. So we hit plus, and that allows you to access either the built-in stuff that's in the Tricaster, or you can come down to Browse and look for your hard drive, which you've plugged in already. And if it is being recognized successfully, it should be listed there. So for example, there's my training backup hard drive. I'm going to select that, and then, open up some folders here and bring in some material. Have this material well organized, as we mentioned, and so it'll be easy to find. Shorter clips are better. Also try to avoid MOV files. Those are kind of hard for the system to digest. It's better to use MPEG-4s, MPEG-2s, things like that. So select your different clips that you're interested in, hit open, and they should load into the DDR. You have two separate DDRs only for organizational purposes. So, it might be convenient to keep certain clips in DDR1 and certain clips in DDR2. So it will play whichever one of these clips you have highlighted. So you click on it to highlight it, and you can either play by clicking the play button that's on the screen with your mouse, or you can come over here to the media player section. You can select the particular DDR that you're trying to play, and you can hit the play button, and that will play that particular clip, and you'll see it up on your monitor on the wall up there. If you want to play more than one, that's perfectly fine. There are certain behaviors you can set up in advance. You come over to the right of the media player section, and you have these buttons. You have loop, single, and autoplay. And so one thing that's good to do is to have autoplay turned on. Autoplay means that when you transition to that footage, it will automatically start to play. That's great. You don't have to hit a separate button for that. And when you come back into the studio and transition back to a camera, the same thing in reverse. It will stop playing. So autoplay usually is something you want to have on. Now, if you want that video to loop over and over again, there you go. You've got a loop button. You're going to push loop, and as you can see, it loops over and over again. If it's only one clip that you want to play, push the single button. Have single pushed, because you may have several clips loaded into that DDR area there. So just choose the one that you want to play, have single pushed, and you're in business. If you want it to go through several clips, great. Then don't have single pushed. And it will autoplay starting on the one you've selected, and it will continue. It will go through each of those clips one by one. When one clip finishes playing, the next one automatically starts to play. And then you can transition whenever you're ready back into the studio. You pick the camera that you want to transition to and transition. So the same principle goes for graphic effects. You can click on GFX2, for example. It's an empty box just waiting for you to fill it. You hit plus, go find the images that you want, and click them and hit OK. And it will bring those images in. And so those are treated as video clips. You will see a play bar moving as you bring a still image onto your show. It will have a sort of a default play time. It'll just look as if it's a video playing as far as the player goes. But it's a still. It'll just play it like a still. I think that covers it, so let's move on to the next topic.
So at the beginning and end of every show, you want to fade from and fade to black. And the reason you do this is because you need 2 seconds of just black at the beginning and the end of your recording for broadcast purposes. The people in program services, they need a little bit of cushion between one show to the next, and that's what that 2 seconds of black does. It kind of keeps it from one show starting on top of another. So to fade to black, very important, hold down the Shift key and then press this FTB button, the FTB, fade to black. I tap it, and then my screen goes dark. Never, ever just hit the FTB button, all right? What that will do is it actually locks up the board, so you can't actually do anything else. I can hit any button I like, but the whole board will lock up, and I won't be able to do anything. So make sure that this light is never on, all right? It should never just be on by itself. So I'm going to turn that off. So if I want to fade up from black, same thing. Hold down the Shift key, hit that FTB button, and then it fades up from black. So when you are getting ready to record a show, your first step is always to fade to black, hit the record button, and then it's the technical director's job to do the countdown. So they would say 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the director will tell them to fade up from black. So now I've got that cushion, that couple seconds of black before my show starts. Now once the show is done, so I've done some switching back and forth, picked different cameras, and once the show's over, then I hold down the Shift key again, tap that fade to black button, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I hold that Shift key and I tap the record button. So that's how you start and stop a show. So keep in mind, if you want to just start recording, just tap that record button. But if I wanted to stop recording, if I just tap the record button, you see the board's telling me, hey, you got to hold down Shift first. All right? So just hold down Shift and stop recording.
So before you actually jump into recording your program, it is extremely important to do a test recording. Don't assume just because it looks like you're recording that you actually are. A lot of things can go wrong. This is a complex system. It's interlinked with another studio down the hallway. So, sometimes wires get crossed and things happen. And so it's really your responsibility as a producer to take this extra step to make sure you're getting a good recording. So we're going to set it up to do a test recording. So you want to get some camera sources loaded in that you can cut back and forth between. So you want to have, obviously, testing your visuals, make sure you have images. You also want to test the Tricaster, make sure that's working okay and that what you're doing on the Tricaster is actually getting recorded. And you want to test the audio. So set up a microphone, make sure your audio is coming through. So now that I have done all those things, I'm ready for my test recording. So I'm going to hit record. And now that I'm recording, I can just take and cut back and forth between cameras. I can maybe do a dissolve, etc. If I had CG loaded, I'd do that too. And that's good enough. And so I stop recording. And I need to load this test recording back into the system here so I can play it and make sure it's okay. So in either DDR1 or DDR2, I can load it in. I can add it in. I'm going to be going up to session recordings. Actually, I see my session right there. So I have a test recording right there. bring it in, and I will play it. And I'm going to bring it up also on the Tricaster on the screen. I'm going to cut to it so that we're going to see it up on the screen. So I'm going to ready DDR2, take it. I'm going to hit play up here where it says media players delegate. I will push DDR2 and play. And now that I'm recording, I can just take and cut back and forth between cameras. I can anything resolve, etc. If I have CD loaded, I do that too. And that's good enough. So I'll stop recording. Looked good, sounded good. So I'm going to call that a successful test recording. I feel confident now that I'm going to actually record the show that I worked so hard to make happen. So if it was not successful, how do you know it wasn't successful? If you don't have picture, when you try to play it back, it's just black. If your audio is cutting in and out, it doesn't sound nice and clean. Those are signs, that something isn't working right. So you would want to exit out of your session and come back into it. You can come back into it or even create a new session if you want to go all the way. And the new session, again, do another test recording, play it back, and if you're successful at that point, great. Then just keep going and you should be fine.
Okay, so once you're done filming your show, you've recorded everything you need to record, then as soon as you're done, you want to start transferring your files onto your own hard drive as soon as possible. That's because we're not quite sure how long it might take for the show to transfer. If it's, a 30-minute show, then it might take 5 to 10 minutes to transfer. It depends on the speed of your hard drive, depends on how long your show is. So it's always a good idea to start transferring as soon as possible. So to do that, I'm going to go over here to File. I'm going to click Exit. And then I'm going to click Exit again. And then it takes me back out to this screen. I'm going to go over to where it says Manage. And then click over here to where it says Clips. All right, and then just like we talked about in the beginning, all of our recordings were going to go onto the Capture Z drive. So it automatically opens it up to that. Here's the capture. Inside of there, all the recordings we did on our show. You'll notice that after each one of these recordings has a little number. So every time we hit record, it adds a number to every subsequent recording. So if you hit record 8 times, you're going to end up with 8 videos, and it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it'll just go through all the numbers upwards until you stop. I'll highlight all the clips that I want to transfer, and then I'll find my hard drive. Here it is over here. And then I can actually just click and drag right into the hard drive. I have a little folder here labeled Sessions. I'm going to just drop it right in there. All right, and now it'll start transferring. So depending on what kind of external device you're transferring to, it could take roughly a quarter of the length of your show. So if your show's an hour long, it'll take about 15 minutes to transfer. So just keep that in mind. All right, so it looks like all my clips have transferred. So now I can close this window. I can come back out, hit the big back arrow, and then hit over here. There's a little eject button. And then I come down to see my hard drive, so I click eject. And then wait until it tells me it's okay. All right, so now I can take my hard drive out and set it back to the open screen. So go back over to new. And so you can leave this how you found it for the next person who comes in the studio. And that's it.
Well, that concludes our coverage of the Tricaster for now. There are obviously many other things that this machine can do, that are beyond the scope of this class, but feel free to approach us. And if you want to dig deeper, we can set up a session. We can do a one-on-one practice session. We also have advanced workshops that cover the other features of the Tricaster. Yes, it looks like a complicating device, and it can be, but you don't have to worry about most of it. You can just focus on the basic controls that we've covered in this class, and you should be fine. And then later, when you feel more comfortable, you can take it to another level.